Welcome to the show, Sean Audet of Cloud Press Publishing, author of adventures such as Turn It Off, The Needle in the Thread, and The Cult of Mr. Jingles, amongst others. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Heath. Really happy to be here. Really appreciate you inviting me on for the show.
As we discussed, my internet is pretty trash right now, so whatever we get out of this, we get out.
Yeah, absolutely. We will make it work.
All right. How did you get started in role-playing games?
You know what? I've been volunteering at a local convention for almost a decade, alongside my wife, and we have a pretty tight-knit group of volunteers. And we were having a post-convention volunteer appreciation party. And one of our volunteers um, around the pool table just says, "Hey guys, have you ever heard of D&D? I'm thinking up of starting a campaign." And so, being, a group of pretty nerdy people, a bunch of people raised their hands and said, "I'd love to join." So my first experience playing D&D was around a table with 12 players. It was a doozy, and bless his heart, our DM did a great job. And that was in 2019. And after a couple months of that, I started to wonder what it would be like to DM myself. And so I started up a small group, a campaign, in, I think, late 2019. And I've been running games ever since, almost on a weekly basis.
That was next question here. Do you play once a week, once a month, different tables?
Well, actually, right now we play twice a week. So I have one table on Sundays, and one table on Thursdays. Two separate groups.
And you run those?
Yeah, I run both of them. The first table, so the table on Sunday, we've been playing same group since 2019, and we actually just wrapped up like roughly a 5-year-long campaign this year. Levels 1 to 20, 5e. It was the first campaign I ever ran. It was an experience, and we've started up just recently a new campaign there. And then the other group actually had been run by a friend, and he recently moved to Japan. And so with that, he'd essentially used the campaign to introduce us to a bunch of other people. And we didn't really want to like let that friend group go. So I just decided to step in and take over as DM to kind of keep everyone together.
Awesome. Then what made you go from player to DM to now publisher?
Yeah, so that kind of jump from player to DM was really, hey, this seems really cool. I think I could do that. I want to give it a try because I've always been into, public speaking, things like that. Uh, Teaching as well. I did spend a bit of time teaching at a local college. And eventually, it got to the point where I wasn't really running other people's games, because when you first start out DMing, it's often really hard to know what to do. So it's easy to just pick up a module, pick up an adventure, and you just kind of take it from there. But as things progressed, I found it more and more interesting to start putting in my own writing, specifically because I wanted to pay a bit more attention to my players' characters, right? And I wanted to write in things specifically for them, because I thought that would be the most engaging way of running a campaign. And that led to me putting in more and more of my own time and my own work into these campaigns. Eventually, to a point where I really started liking the writing aspect of it. It was a lot of fun, and eventually I started running games elsewhere as well. So games at small conventions or for other friends or like friends and family and things like that. Um, and at that point, uh, I didn't really want to just go and Google, one shot. I wanted to write something specifically for them. And that's really where the writing came out of it. I ended up finding that, hey, I'm actually spending a lot of time on writing these one shots, and I'm actually, making my own art for them and messing around with all these, um, different skills to try and make this stuff. Why don't I put in, 25% more effort and turn it into something polished that I can, you know, show other people or just kind of put out into the void.
Uh, I came across your first adventure, I believe is what you deem it, Turn It Off.
Mm.
And was that a submission to the Knave second edition? What do they call that on itch?
The game jam.
Game Jam. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, it was. So kind of funny thing, I started writing technically the first adventure that I ever really did. Oh goodness, a while ago, like over a year ago. Um, and I have a couple of adventures basically done, just kind of on deck that I never published. And sometimes work gets busy, and it was never really a huge priority to publish anything for me. I mostly get a lot of enjoyment from making it. But then, uh, yeah, this game jam announcement showed up on my YouTube, and I thought, hey, why not give it a shot? And so I looked into it. I've been interested in kind of hider systems like OSR style stuff for some time now, and so I figured I'll learn the system. I'll figure out how to use InDesign, and I'll try something new. And so I put together Turn It Off in like 2 weeks, I think, and then submitted it. And I think having the pressure of the game jam uh, was really nice actually, because it kind of pushed me to not just build this thing out and then keep iterating on it for like a year, but to just get it out there immediately. And since then, it's only been maybe less than 2 months, and I already have two more adventures out. Yeah.
So cool. Backing it up, I think we're very similar. I started with Lost Mines of Fandelver,
Mm.
and that's a great module, but yeah, I wanted to do some more writing. So my friends and I just did a one shot of Mothership,
Oh,
and
nice. I really want to give Mothership a shot.
it's my favorite system.
Wow.
Uh, they have tons of these pamphlet adventures,
Hmm.
uh, and would have been totally fine, but it's hard for me to run other people's stuff.
Mm. Yeah, and I get it.
Uh,
Sometimes you get as much enjoyment just from the writing portion or the prep portion as you do from actually playing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you run or played Knave, or was it just you said that popped up and I'm gonna make this adventure for Knave?
So I had run like other smaller OSR systems before, but this was really my first kind of experience with Nave. Thankfully, especially in the OSR scene, there's a lot of overlap, right? So obviously, every system has its own kind of quirks and its own things that it does really well. But I learned as much about Knave from play testing the adventure than anything.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is this heavily based on the movie Lighthouse?
Yeah, I really love Robert Eggers' work, and I was born on the East Coast of North America as well, so lighthouses are really prevalent out there. It's a big part of the culture, and yeah, I mean, there's just something kind of creepy about it, and it's a great movie. So I definitely found a ton of influence.
I think it hits all the notes for a one shot. It's a small, isolated location, plenty of rooms to explore. Uh, I don't want to get into spoilers of any secrets that you have in here, but super well done, super awesome.
Thank you very much. I do think, I'm really new at this, so I'm kind of floored by the positive response that it's gotten, especially on Itch, on Reddit as well. Because when you put something like this together, right? I can run this for friends and family, people that I know, and I know just based off of my ability to run this because I wrote it, right? It's going to be easy, and also based off of what my friends will enjoy. I know that we can have a good time. But when you're writing for other people, it's a completely different ball game, right? To know whether someone else can pick up your adventure and turn it into an enjoyable evening is, largely a different set of skills. So I was really pleased by the response. Um, I think I still have a lot of work to go, but it was nice to see because I really just assumed it would kind of go up there and like no one would ever really see it.
Do you keep track of your numbers? Do you have any idea how many times it's been downloaded?
Um, I haven't checked in a little while, but I think it was at like a little over 1,000 downloads.
Amazing. Um, then we'll use this discussion to kick off. What are your other projects? And you can go in depth as you want on any or all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So after Turn It Off, um, we did, and I say we because my wife helps out tremendously in the process. We usually kind of ideate, come up with ideas together, and she does a lot of kind of proofreading throughout. I'm often kind of referencing and bringing her in on ideas, and she's also my editor because she's a professional editor. Um, so having that resource is a huge help. But we released the Cult of Mr. Jingles for Mouse Ritter because Mouse Ritter popped up on Itch for me as another game jam, and I thought let's just keep it rolling. So I joined that game jam, and I put that out within 1 or 2 weeks, and the community's been fantastic. And after that, we put out The Needle and the Thread, which is a lot more of a light-hearted toned adventure. Um, Next, we're probably going to put out another Mouse Ritter adventure. Um, again, a bit more lighthearted and kind of based off of like a pirate theme, like pirate rats. And after that, it's tough to say exactly what I'll do next. But there are a number of other kind of Mouse Ritter adventures sort of floating in the ether. Um, and I have those two older adventures we briefly talked about earlier, the Isle of Bells.
Can I show it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so
And
the Crystal Cavern. So both of those, I well, more or less completed like over a year ago. And I've like, run them at clubs and for friends and for family. So they've been play tested quite a bit. I just never kind of got around to publishing them. So honestly, I think I'll probably get to that pretty soon too, and get that out as well. Um, and then after that, honestly, Heath, I have like a laundry list of ideas and like semi-started adventures. So I'm not hurting for ideas.
well, I'm here for it.
Absolutely.
Kind of the same question about Knave for Mouse Ritter. What got you into Mouse Ritter?
You know what? It's Redwall. Do you know Redwall, the book series?
Um,
Oh my
I
God,
I can
Heath. Heath.
vaguely remember the cover of a knighted mouse on the
Yeah.
cover, but I don't think I ever read it.
Redwall is classic. That was like a huge part of my childhood. There's this old English guy, Brian Jacques, and he's one of those like prodigious children's authors who somehow has put out an incredible volume of work over the course of his career. And he started something and he just kind of stuck with it. As far as I know, almost everything that he ever wrote was part of this, universe he created, Redwall. And it's really just, pretty classic, like medieval aged fantasy. But the shtick is, instead of humans, it's just a bunch of different kinds of rodents. Essentially, that's a bit of an oversimplification, but that's kind of the gist. He has like dozens of books in this universe, and I just loved reading them as a kid. So a few years ago, I want to say, when I first saw Mouse Ritter, it was like I instantly bought it. I instantly started looking into it, and I just thought it was great. It just kind of captivated me. I don't know that it would work for everyone, but it made me think of Redwall, and it just kind of got the creative juices going, and it kind of made me think of being a kid again.
Yeah, I think you're right. The word shtick. If it's not your shtick, it's not for you. But I just think it's so, I mean, simple but creative that Dungeons and dragons are the big boss, but in Mouse Ritter, it's a cat.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, people have talked about this extensively, right? They've talked about it super in depth, but like there is sort of a genius in that if I describe to you, walking through a dungeon or a cave or something like that, you know, you can kind of imagine it to, varying degrees of accuracy. Um, but like you've probably never been in a dungeon or a cavern, right? But I mean, you've been outside, you know what a tree looks like. You've been inside the room of a house, right? So when we when we describe things in those terms, like it automatically makes sense. People pick up on it like perfectly. Um, and also, I think there's like a power in um, playing something that's like so far removed from who and what you are that it kind of it breaks down barriers slightly.
I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, with your experience, uh, working with different tables and at these conventions, volunteering, uh, what's your go-to system?
Go-to system. Honestly, Heath, you're gonna call me basic here. But for playing with people in public, it's usually just 5e, because that's, by a wide margin the most popular game out there. And if you're, advertising a game of D&D, that's what most people are going to be expecting, right? I think you have a bit more leeway if you kind of know your players, or you're introducing people to the hobby for the first time. But if you're going out in a public setting, it's just more likely that 5e is what your players are already going to know. And it it's almost like, a shared kind of common language. Um, as little as possible, I don't really want to be worrying about, teaching rules and things like that at a public table, if I can help it.
Sure. Um, last winter, I have a friend that he'd be all in it, but he's got two kids, super busy, no time. But we finally carved out a night to play, and I had written a one shot, and yeah, D&D was the go-to. Give him the classic fastball down the
Yeah,
middle. Here's your the fantasy you think you're gonna get, and it was
yeah.
awesome. And in the podcast, I often say it is a little vanilla for me, but there's a reason why it's is successful as it is, whether it's marketing or something like that. But it has sound mechanics. You can't say it's a bad game.
Well, the other thing that I typically keep in mind too is that just due to the nature of like TTRPGs, um, it really, what's the best way to say this? The most important thing is really the people who are playing at the table, right? It's not a video game, it's not a board game, although rules and mechanics are super important and can make a big difference in your experience. I think they do take, they play second fiddle to the people at the table, um, and how cohesively you all play together, right? So I think if you use 5e and you're at a really, really great table, you're gonna have a great time. I'd rather be playing with a really great group, playing the worst system ever, than playing with a difficult group and playing the world's most perfect perfect system.
No, that's very fair point. Definitely. Uh, I'm in the mood to risk it. You can say no, but uh, if my internet allows, you mind sharing your screen and walking us through some Photoshop or InDesign?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let me pull this up. Okay, we're going to hop over to InDesign first, and this is turn it off. So let me know if this is showing up okay for you.
Looks like it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so the thing is here, I'm, I mentioned this before the show, but I'm not like a graphic designer by trade. This is really just something I do in my off time. So there are definitely people better equipped to, um, teach this kind of thing, especially considering the fact that Turn It Off was my first time using any kind of like publishing design software. So really, I lean pretty heavily on the work of Explorers Design. Do you know that blog?
Never heard of it.
Okay, so I want to give a huge shout out to Explorers Design. Um, the owner of Explorers Design has a blog that has a ton of posts with extremely useful advice on design, right? And it's really anything from like mechanical design, like game design from that perspective. But the thing that I found most useful was more the graphic design side of things, centered on TTRPGs and TTRPG publishing. So the bones of Turn It Off, for example, is a template that Explorers Design offers, which you can purchase and license. And so that allowed me to kind of open this up and mess around with it and kind of, cut out and use the pieces that I needed. Um, and kind of parsing through that template was really what taught me to use InDesign. So if you are using a piece of design software for the first time, whether it's InDesign or Affinity, I would highly recommend checking out Explorers Design's website and checking out his template because it's going to make your life so much easier. Now, as far as this module, like the big considerations for me were, um, okay, I'm pretty comfortable writing the content. I'm pretty comfortable working with the mechanics, but I'm not an artist at all. And given the fact that the visual appeal of your adventure is seen as a huge selling point, um, like even in indie publishing, I was kind of racking my brains to figure out how I could sort of get over this because my skills in terms of illustration are, I would say, like really limited, almost like non-existent. Like you've seen kind of what I did on Isle of Bells. Um, that's really like it's really simple stuff. I don't have a lot of like range in what I can do because again, I'm not an artist. Um, so as I was joining the community for this game jam, I noticed a lot of people mentioning using like royalty-free or public domain art, which I had never thought of doing. So immediately I just started looking through art, and that's kind of a place I'm pretty comfortable in from my day job, kind of curating mood boards and things like that, and also for my own D&D games, just looking through libraries and reams of images to use as reference points. So essentially, I started looking through these public domain libraries, figuring out, okay, this is a horror game. Um, it's set in a lighthouse. It's set around, kind of roughly this, few hundred years ago or so. What kind of time period and painting style can I get into that might work well for this? So I started kind of building out a mood board, picking out things that essentially paintings and pieces of art that I thought would work for that and sort of build the aesthetic and the tone of the game. Um, and that ended up being a huge part um, of my process, really.
Where did you get the map from of the
Oh,
layout of the lighthouse?
okay. So the painting here at the top of the frame, that's Seascape by Peter Balk. I added on this house portion here. Um, and the map itself, I drew. Um, but
It's beautiful.
oh well, thank you very much. But yeah, the map making itself. I mean, hold on, I'll switch our screen here, and I'll show you my Photoshop. So I have here the map in Photoshop. And I mean, I think when it's zoomed out, it's got a bit of a nicer appearance. But I mean, if you zoom in really close here, at the end of the day, it's really just scribbles, you know? So uh,
But I would say that leads to the rundown, weathered aesthetic of the lighthouse.
yeah, yeah, I guess it does. As far as my process for that goes, really, again, I start out kind of building a mood board and looking for reference art. And in this case, I started with the lighthouse from the movie The Lighthouse. So I just kind of screen grabbed pictures from the movie, and I started kind of messing around with it a little bit to sort of get the like length that I wanted, and I made a bit of like a wireframe, almost more like a point kind of crawl, to show exactly where everything should be. And then once I sort of had the structure together, um, I wasn't 100% sure how I wanted to do it. To begin with, I thought maybe I'd want like a cutout, but it comes back down to um, what I realistically can do with my skill set. And I've done sort of top-down maps before. And I thought it was like a relatively easy style to get into. So I translated this layout um, into the actual overhead map here. Um, honestly, because I thought it was more approachable uh, than doing the side kind of cutaway view. Because my perspective work is it's pretty bad.
Well, you are very humble because can I show some of the Isle of Bells?
Yeah, go for it.
So you say your drawing abilities are less than stellar, but I mean, this is everything I want. This uh Anastasia Bell. I mean, that's amazing. You couldn't give me 100 years to draw something like that. But for your cutout comment, I mean, this and the Crystal Cavern. I mean, this is a work of art. This is amazing.
Well, I can't take full credit for that. I well actually he's in the credits of the Isle of Bells. But the idea for the Isle of Bells first came from another creator that I found on a TTRPG subreddit, and he had made this beautiful dungeon, and it's very similar to that. He had made this beautiful dungeon. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I just I wanted to use this illustration that he had made, this dungeon map, to make an adventure to play with my family. So that's what I did, and I built out this whole adventure for it. And I like sort of built it out a little bit further, and I needed to adjust the map to make it happen. So I started kind of like cannibalizing his map in Photoshop and like adjusting the structure like slightly to make it work. Eventually, um, I wanted to kind of perfect it and make it into, to something I could bring to a convention to run. So I turned it into the Isle of Bells, and I reached out to him and I sent it to him, and I said, this is kind of what I did with your map, and what do you think? And do you mind if I put it online for free eventually? And he was like, "Oh, this is great, absolutely." It's all under Creative Commons, but I can't take 100% credit for that, because I took his map, and I sort of pieced it together how I wanted it, and I then essentially just used it as building blocks. So actually, we should shout him out if you want to turn to the.
Mukul Gupta,
Yeah, his work is great.
Mukul Gupta, Gupta.
Yeah, now he's an awesome illustrator. His stuff is incredible. And I think you can find him on Instagram especially. But like his stuff is really, really cool. So I would say, like 90% of the credit for that should go to him.
You're a humble man. Thoughts on AI art?
Uh, well, I mentioned I'm a photographer by trade. So, you see it popping up more and more. Um, Personally, I don't really like seeing, the marketplaces flooded with content that's, you know, just a bunch of AI generated stuff. I'm sure some people find a place for it, but in a lot of in a lot of use cases or situations, I think it just ends up flooding the market with kind of lower quality material. Um, and I think it can be a bit of a shame sometimes. So yeah,
All right. I've got a
it's.
handful of. Oh, you go.
I was gonna say it seems like it's hard to get around these days. But you're seeing platforms like Itch, put in their clauses like, oh, you have to disclose this. So it's. I think there are a bit more checks and balances, but yeah.
I have a handful of things published on Drive Through RPG. Nothing I'm necessarily proud of to say anybody should go check out. But I've gone out of my way to design stuff that's lower tier, but just know that I made it myself.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's totally fine for like personal use. Like, hey, I need to find a specific picture of like two orcs attacking a tavern, and you can't
Yeah.
find it, and you want to use it at your table. Sure, no problem. But yeah, once you are officially publishing it for others, that's kind of where I draw the line.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, what people want to do, at their own tables, I think that's your business. But if you're publishing something, and especially if you're charging for it, then I think, there's an expectation of a certain kind of like level uh, of effort.
Agreed. Yep. Uh, from what you said, sounds like you're a very busy guy, but I've got this question on here. Do you do any freelance work? If anybody were to reach out, say, hey, I need an adventure for my system, is that something you would consider?
I would definitely consider it. I've honestly never thought of it before. Like you've seen, I've just published all of my adventures for free. Probably will for the foreseeable future. Um, it's really just part of my hobby right now. But I do love to write, and I do freelance for my full-time job as well. So if anyone did want to reach out, I would be more than happy to talk things through.
We can do it at the end too, but what is your contact information?
Honestly, you can find me on Itch at Cloud Press Publishing. We do have a website up as well, and of course, my email, Cloud Press Publishing, is a good place to find me as well. We do technically have an Instagram account as well, but I'll be honest, Heath. Uh, I've been keeping it pretty casual so far, so we don't update that much.
Hey, this podcast super casual. My internet's hanging on by a thread. So, um, anything else you want to talk about, promote? Um, a question I don't have on the list, but if there's one or two things that you could give for GM advice, or like, man, this is one of my favorite resources and nobody knows about it.
Oh, GM. Okay. Honestly, Explorer's Design for anyone who wants to get into publishing stuff, they're fantastic. I would highly recommend taking a look at their blog. Can't recommend them enough. Ooh, as far as general GM advice goes, honestly, the more comfortable you can get with improvisation, I think the easier things get, right? And becoming comfortable and confident with your improvisation is really, really key. And I think that's something that people develop over time. And it's something a lot of people struggle with when they first begin. But if you put time and effort into that, it pays back in so many ways, in the quality and also the fun that you have in the table. So I'd say for anyone who's just kind of starting out, that's my biggest piece of advice.
Couldn't agree more. That word I feel is underused as a DM. It is improv.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Any other last words?
Last words. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, and we pulled through despite the internet. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe one or two little glitches there, hopefully, but nothing major.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for thinking of me, for reaching out, and you're way too kind. Again, I'm just kind of, messing around with this. I'm by no means a professional, so I really appreciate all the compliments.
Yeah, you're too humble because this stuff is amazing.
Well, thank you very much, Heath.
All right, Sean Audet of Cloud Press Publishing. You're the man.
Take care, Heath.
Later.